Hey guys, Monte back here playing Kerbal Space Program, and I want to talk about getting your spacecraft to the moon, collecting a bunch of science, and getting back home to Kerbin. This episode I'm starting in the Science Research and Science Laboratory, and I want to talk about the progression and what I suggest. And that is definitely at the very beginning, you're going to get, your mystery goo container, and then you're going to want to go through the science direction, so science tech. So get your science junior as soon as you can. The reason I say this is going to save you from having to go back and revisit some of the biomes, which is like the different science locations, such as like the waters and highlands and mountains and all that. So you want to spend your early science points on science tech, and then as soon as you can, space exploration, because this is going to get you your thermometer, which also gets you a lot of science within Kerbin and all the different biomes. And then the next thing, of course, is advanced exploration. That's going to get you your barometer. The other thing you want to shoot for early on is this the electronics. This is going to get you your solar panel, the little static one, so it's not a retractable, extendable kind of deal. It's just a little single panel, but that's all you need for those early on probes to go send out to the further missions where you don't want to, risk your Kerbal's lives. So electricity is another early one you want to go for. So I kind of suggest, avoiding, some of this flight control. To get all these extra cockpits and, some aerodynamic stuff, like that can wait, definitely, because once you collect all these extra science techs, you're going to be burning through stuff really fast, actually. The other thing is this rocket I'm going to build to try to get to the moon and back. I'm going to go with basic parts. I'm actually just going to use basic rocketry, like, for example, this T400 fuel tank I'm going to use. And we're also going to take along our mystery goo container. I'm going to take along all the science just so you can see how it's all used. But of course, just, pack as many of the science pieces of equipment as you can on there. And then I'm seeing that all you get at the beginning is the T30. You get this T45 at General Rocketry. This one, it shouldn't cost too much to unlock General Rocketry. This one's going to give you a little bit more control. But for the testing purposes, I'm going to go ahead and challenge myself and try to get it to the moon and back with just using the T30s. So that might be a little rough. If it doesn't work out, we're going to have to rebuild a rocket, and I'll use the T45. So that basically means, try to get your science tech unlocked using, just hopping your little rockets around in Kerbin. Get your general rocketry so you can get this T45 engine, and try to upgrade just your science tech and electronics. And then science just starts pouring in, as you can see. And then I still do the same thing because I wanted the accelerometer, and there's spectrometers, there's all kinds of, the magnometer, there's all kinds of more science as you move on. Even the gravioli detector, that one's really packing in the science, and I get the science laboratory and nose cone. So this gets crazy out here. It's like 2,000 science. So yeah, I can already tell I'm going to have to break this to the moon and back into 2 episodes because I'm all chatty. But let's get back to the Launch Assembly Center. I'd rather give a little bit too much information than not enough. So see, I already have started working on this to the moon and back again. So I'm going to do what I said and switch over to the T30 engine, and let's start at the top. All I did was get a basic pod. I'm excited. I got this new command pod that I'm going to start being able to use. Haven't even built a ship with it yet. I put all the science that I could on here. Here's my science junior. Here's the mystery goo, which is one of the first things you're going to get. And I attached everything with easy access to the door, which we'll talk about once we're in space, because you're going to want to exit EVA, take all the data off of these things, and go back in the ship, because what that does is it resets all these experiments so you can use them again. And then, so the next thing is I went over to propulsion and I took one of these smaller fuel tanks. What is this? The little T200, and placed it here. We'll see if that's big enough. And what it's powering is a T45, so that one was sneaking in there. So let's go ahead and put this T30 in. Preferably what you're going to want to use is this little, where'd it go? The little 909 engine for in space, but I'm going to stick to the basic parts. As you can see, I put a decoupler on. And then what I'm going with in this one is I'm going to try to go with 1, 2, 3, 4 larger fuel of the T400s and then a 30 at the bottom. And then what we're going to do is get our radial decoupler on here. And let's see, I'm going to hit the X key to symmetry mode, make it so there's going to be one on the opposite side. I'm going to kind of line up with the decoupler, and we should have one on both sides. That looks good. So now let's go ahead and get another T400 tank and line it up here. And then I'm going to use the Alt key to press on one of these T400s and pop one up here. Let's see, put another one down here and another one down here. And yeah, you shouldn't have it because you shouldn't have spent your points on it, but when you get these little aerodynamic cones, I guess that'll, you know, help you out a little tiny bit. I'm going to Alt key on the 30 engine and just place those there. Now it kind of makes them face the opposite directions, which I don't think should make too much of a difference, but it might cause my ship to spin, so we'll see. So this should be ready to fly. Let's see our stages. We want to fire. Let's flip these up here because we want to fire these engines and this engine at the same time. And we're going to then have these two pop off, so when these burn out, and then we're going to cut this engine, and we'll still have this engine to get home. So I want, trying to think. No, to get to the moon, I think I want to change this up. So I'm going to grab by the decoupler. And I'm going to go with 3 boosters. I'm going to have this right down the center. Because I'm thinking I want a little bit more boost to get into orbit. And I'm going to use these boosters to do that. So this guy, I'm going to put on his own stage. Here we go. And I'm going to move these 2 here. And I think this third one is, yep, that's just the other decoupler for the third booster. So now I've got the 3 engines and the 3 decouplers here in separate stages. So spacebar is fire. That's going to blow those off. And then we're going to have this stage here, which actually I'm going to want to now drop. I don't want it that heavy. So I'm dropping a fuel tank. So now I'm only doing 1, 2, 3 fuel tanks in this stage. Which will hopefully get me, so this gets me to orbit in a way, and this should get me into a circular orbit, and hopefully have enough fuel to then get me to the moon. And if not, that's fine. Hopefully we have enough fuel and everything up here to get to the moon and back. So that's where I'm going to make the trade out. I don't want to rely on that little dinky little fuel tank. So since we got rid of one down here, I think this will even out just fine. Especially since I don't have a 45. I'm going to be wasting control, so I'm going to be wasting fuel. So let's see what we can do with this one. No guarantees. Haven't even tested it, but from my memory, I think this is the kind of rocket that I got to work. But the point is, you know, don't try to build something and plan out to like land on the moon the very first time. Just try to get out there, collect some EVA science, and we'll go from there. So let's get our control with the T key, and I'm going to throttle up and burn. And we're off. The next thing, I'll probably talk about it in a little bit more detail in another episode, but you know, you notice I'm always going towards the 90 degree, and that's because you want to get into a little nice equatorial orbit around whatever planet or moon you're on. The reason for that is if you zoom out, for my example, is this is kind of looking at an equatorial view. If you happen to have your ship going, north to south pole, it's going to be really hard to intersect yourself with one of these moons. So you got to kind of keep an eye out on that stuff. So like I said, I'll kind of spend an episode a little bit more in that map view and really kind of talk about the reasons why and all that. But yeah, so I'm going to kind of head straight up. I want to make sure I'm not really aiming north or west or anything like that, because I'm going to have to correct to go east anyway. So if you're heading any direction too soon, east is best, which is east is 90. 180 is south and 27 is west. I always remember the other tip is the Milky Way, or whatever, the Kerbal Way, or whatever you want to call it in the moon. That's east. West has, actually, I should look the other way before I talk, because you do have a nice little cloud, because it's the galaxy spinning around, so you should see it all the way around. But you just want to make sure you're lined up with it. And this nice light side is on the east side. On the east side. Alright. See how this thing does without the T key. Tiki torch. Alright, it's a little unstable. It kind of starts spinning around. Gotta get myself back. Where's the control pod? There it is. So even here you can start trying to collect your science and things like that if you haven't for Kerbal, but I want to focus on getting the science at the moon. So that's more of where I'll talk about that. So let's lose the boosters. And let's fire up the engine. Boom! And let's see how we're doing on our orbit here. Are we at... So I want to get this up to 100K. So we're at 56. So I want to aim back. No. I lost my directional sense. Okay, so I'm turning the wrong way. I keep heading southeast. Listen to my own advice. I need to aim this way. Okay, so now that we're aimed the right direction, and we're almost at 100 here. As soon as this hits 100, I'm going to hit the X key, and in this view you can see what the X key does is it kills my throttle. And the reason is because if I keep throttling up now, I'm just going to keep shooting further out in space this way and just wasting fuel. The whole point of this stage is to get into orbit. So instead of wasting fuel, the most efficient way to get in orbit is wait until you hit this little apoapse. So that's why I'm saying I want that to hit 100K. And I've got a minute 43 here. I'm covering up the camera, but I've got a minute and 35 seconds to figure this maneuver out before I hit that point. And that point is when I'm going to start getting hit back into the gravitational pull of Kerbal. So that's why if you wait too long, it's too late. You're going to get sucked in by gravity, and you got too much weight to get yourself back up. That's what you use those boosters for right off the bat. So I have other videos on how to get in Kerbal orbit, but yeah, I'm just kind of getting this all set. I got a minute, but I don't have a minute because I don't want these videos to keep stretching out. So I'm going to aim at my node. I'm going to, which is probably going to be about here. I'm going to warp a little bit. 40, 30, 20, 10. As you can tell, I don't like doing a lot of after editing to my videos, so I try to stage everything so I can get to everything about as fast as possible. So it looks like I'm going to have to waste about a minute's burn of fuel to get into orbit, but that's the point of this stage. And hopefully we're going to have enough to swing to the moon, and have the moon's gravity should just be able to swing us right back to Kerbal. That's our hope. So it's all about the maneuver that you create from Kerbal's orbit that kind of will dictate on how much fuel you're going to use up and lose and all that fun stuff. So we got 20 seconds left. I don't know if this fuel cell is going to be enough to get us out of or into an orbit. We might have to kind of cut into this, so I'm really glad I put this extra large fuel tank up here. These 30 engines seem to be giving me plenty of, there we go, we hit an orbit. Sorry, I've got to come out here because I like to see where my orbit is. So I'm 203 by 80, and that's perfect. So here, you know, I can tell the camera changed and things like that, and I can just guess by my burn. It says that I'm ready to hit X and kill my engines, but in this view, which you'll learn, it doesn't seem so straightforward at first, but you're going to end up in this view a lot more for all your maneuvers, because this is where you can really see what your ship's doing. So I actually overshot. Those engines were pretty powerful, so I'm now in a 200 by 80 kilometer orbit. So the only way to fix that is once I'm all the way out in this 200K orbit, I'm going to push my you know, prograde out, my little green circle, which will extend out my periaps. So this is my little the moon and back again. See, this is what I'm saying, is you can kind of see it all from here, and then you just bring up your nav bar. And you can see all the movement nodes and all that stuff here. So let's get to the apoaps. And right before I get to the apoaps, I'm going to want to slow down here and set up my maneuver, because if I actually hit towards that retrograde, I'm going to bring my periaps in and fall back into Kerbal, and that's what we do not want to do. But what we want to do is get into a little bit more of a circular orbit, so we want to match our 200K. And again, if you try to do it from this side, it's going to affect both sides. The point of doing it at this apoaps is when I burn out here, is that it's only going to bring my periaps out where my apoaps will stay in the same spot. I can kind of give a slight example of that by if I just kind of throttle my engines forward now, you can see that this actually gets away from me. While this does increase, which is what we want, you don't really want this to increase as well. So I'm going to warp forward a little bit more and get closer to the apoaps. And now we're right on top of it. So now that we're on top of it, if you look at when I burn my fuel, and here is, you don't go full out, just hit shift key a little bit, give yourself a little throttle, and you can see this going out, and you can see this staying at 203. And that's the point. And see, so this is still going out, still going out. And see, just a little tiny bit of throttle. If you overdo it, you're going to overshoot. And then as soon as I hit, oh, see, that's starting to go out. This is going out. I'm going to go ahead and hit the X key. So remember, you're in orbit, no rush. If things start to go crazy real quick, hit the X key. And as long as you have some type of circular orbit, and this is going to be fine. 205 by 192, that's good enough. That's good enough for the purpose of going to the moon. The problem is I did not do a very good job of showing you a nice equatorial orbit. I should be kind of like my my orbital space station. So what you would have to do in this case is add a maneuver right here in the middle, like find the equator, and come on, let me do a maneuver mode. So sometimes I get this weird deal where it doesn't let me add a maneuver again. Of course, while I'm doing a video is when it happens. So let's go ahead and set the moon as a target. Oh yeah, see, it doesn't let you click on anything. So to fix this, sometimes I'm in an orbit, so it's fine. I go to the Space Center. Yeah, I don't know what. It's got to be a little bit of a bug. And I go to the Tracking Center, but it's kind of like you did so many maneuvers, it gets confused, and it just doesn't let you click on anything again. So I'm going to go to the moon and back again and fly it. But so yeah, if you go back to your Space Center and then click on fly it, now everything should be fixed because I'm in orbit. Yep, so now it's back. So now I can click on the moon and say set as a target. And it's still going to be fine. I'm not going to try to fix this, but since I was in the middle of explaining it, I will. As you can see, actually this is nice. It creates this nice dotted line. So if I zoom out, you can see, okay, that's the moon is on a nice equatorial orbit of Kerbal. See, there's the moon, and it's just spinning around. But me, I launched from my space station kind of south, right? Remember I was having those issues, and I was drifting off, and I wasn't hitting that 90-degree mark. This is what happens. So if you don't hit 90 degrees, I was hitting something more like 145. It brought me in an orbit like this, which actually, if you zoom out, is more of an orbit like my poor Jebediah in the Untitled spacecraft is in. So I'm actually in a pretty good capture orbit for him. And then also Minmus. Low gravity, but it is in a slightly awkward orbit. The nice thing is if you really zoom out, look, most all the planets and the whole solar system is in a nice equatorial orbit. Very handy for jumping to these other places. So 90 degrees is your friend. That's why. But if you've clicked right on this 90-degree mark, this is where your up and down thrust. So this means you're, instead of pushing your thrust just forward from where your ship is doing, you're going to aim up and push yourself up. So you can use these pink nodes here and bring yourself into a nice equatorial orbit, but I don't want to waste the fuel on that. I can get to the moon without doing it. So that's what we're going to do in episode 2, is actually swing out of orbit, get to the moon, swing back, and hopefully bring home a bunch of science. So hopefully this episode's rocket will work. If not, we'll definitely build another one and get this working together, guys. And then, yeah, I don't want to jump ahead. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I think this episode kind of helps to explain why 90 and also, you know, how to kind of build a basic ship craft and the directions on what you want to do with your science. As far as your tech tree, like priority, spend your science on being able to collect more science, and then you'll be able to build out your ships crazy and explore wherever. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. All right, peace out.